we're back with another episode of Inside Sports Fantasy Football. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here from ISFF, Pop Culture Cosmos, where we cover the latest news and trends in pop culture each and every week, twice a week. I can hide you wherever you get your podcast, plus also as well, of course, the Lakers Fast Break, where we cover everything going on in the NBA and the Lakers Fast Break. No, Chris Pratt in Guardians of the Galaxy, my friend. I will tell you, though, also as well, go ahead and catch everything that the Domination Sports Nation is doing right there for you, wherever you get your podcasts. Chris and Dom Lardieri, they're a great team covering the world of sports today. Yeah, I know. There you go. That's exactly what I was going to say. That's exactly what I said. Yeah, there you go. But also catch our shows every single week on Croc Radio in Canada. Big shout out to Buddy Gold for picking up the Domination Sports Nation this week. They also play the ISFF and Pop Culture Cosmos, so go ahead and check that out there as well. Also, go ahead and check out Ox 1947 at LakersBall.com. And of course, everything that we do right here at the Pop Culture Cosmos, indeed. But it is NFL Week 5. First things first, I want to mention, make sure you look at your lineups within the next, 24 hours or so? Because if you don't, you might get stuck with your guys on a bye. So you got to make sure, because the buys start this week. So make sure you look at your players. Make sure if you need to go ahead and start streaming defenses or streaming kickers, look at your teams, look at your players, look to see if they're on a bye and make the changes accordingly before you go ahead and look at the waiver wires, trades, or anything else out there. But if you need help with that, you can always go ahead and hit us up. ISFantasyFootball at yahoo.com or Inside Sports FF on Twitter. But also as well here today, great guys indeed. First up, it is my regular fellow panelist and co-host here every single time out. It is a good man indeed. You got to go ahead and check him out today at the Domination Sports Nation. It is Chris Lardieri. And Chris, great to have you here. Also got the guys from the Lakers Fast Break, which I'll give an intro here in a second. But I do want to start with you, my friend, as a Giants fan. Your season, which I've told you I thought it might be looking good, like a 10-8 season, maybe even thinking about a wild card or possible playoff spot. It's gone off the rails, and I think the actual moment when I thought the season is finally just off the rails entirely was the tush push, where not only one, but two players on the Giants team got injured. How in the hell does that happen?
I have no idea. Either they don't practice it like the Eagles do with Sirianni every week, or they're really just that incompetent. And
I
look,
think it's the latter.
yeah, I don't know. There are a lot of people already trying to jump off the Brian Daboll bandwagon, saying the team isn't prepared and the special teams is a nightmare, which it is. But let's face facts. This team hasn't had an offensive line under multiple GMs and coaches going back to, well, probably the heyday of Eli Manning. And Evan Neal is going to go down as probably one of the worst high offensive line picks this side of Robert Gallery. Hopefully, you youngsters out there don't know about him. Google him. And in a draft, Al Davis once picked a tackle out of Iowa that was supposed to be the next great thing, and he was so bad he was a guard a few years later, and I fear that's what's going to happen to Neal. But they got a rough schedule. I mean, we're probably looking at 1-5 here. The Dolphins are going to smell blood on Sunday, most likely, and then the Bills are going to come back from London and put a whooping on them, and then they got a potentially winnable game against the Jets, but when you consider that's not really a road game, who knows? Zach Wilson might actually show up for that game, so it's going to get ugly.
I will say this, though. Even if I broke my leg, compound fracture and all, I would never say I'm hurt on a tush push. Just the sheer embarrassment of saying you got hurt on a tush push is just no. I'm sorry, I can't do that. You can't do that.
I mean, if anyone were to get hurt, it'd be the quarterback, right? From getting pushed too hard or knocking
You
into
would
someone.
think.
Or I don't get it.
But it wasn't. Where has it all gone wrong? The offense is terrible. The defense can't even keep anybody at bay. Where did it all go wrong?
Here's what I think. Last year was a complete fluke. As a diehard Giants fan, I'll admit that. They won a playoff game. It was great. But last year was supposed to be a rebuilding year, probably finish in last, get a decently high pick, and gear up for this year. Well, what happened is the Giants thought, well, we got some talent here. Let's build around Jones. Let's give him this, $82 million of guaranteed money, and if he doesn't work out after 2 years, well, at least we tried to be a contender for those 2 years. And in reality, they were at best a mediocre team who played an easy schedule and beat a Vikings team that had no business even being in the playoffs, as we see this year. And Joe Shane and company, instead of kind of doing a modified rebuild, just said, all right, we're now going to contend for a high wild card spot because we know we're not going to beat the Eagles. We can't beat anyone in the NFC East. And that's what you do, I guess. You start believing your own hype.
Also here today, a good man indeed. He's the madman from Toronto. He did get out of Toronto traffic to talk about some fantasy football and also a little bit about his Raiders. It is the Magic Man, Sean Grice. And Sean, great to have you here. And it's just so great that I went to Allegiant Stadium over the course of the weekend and got myself a new trash can because it's quite fitting to see that the Raiders are pretty much trash themselves at this point in time.
Yes. As
Your answer is great.
as
That was
the,
perfect.
as the world turns, nothing ever changes in the land of the Raiders. Ever.
Yeah, that's true.
And Gerald, when it does change, there's a fluke. 16 was a fluke. It's terrible. Look,
What's gone wrong? It's just so bad right now.
it's
I mean,
bad. It's bad from top to bottom. That's all I could say. The talent evaluation is bad, like really, really bad. I don't understand McDaniel's play calling anymore. I mean, he used to be a decent one, Gerald. I mean, even if the talent wasn't there, he'd have a half-assed game plan. What he's running now is it's amateurish at best. Yeah, they kind of handled the Chandler Jones situation as best as a team probably could have given the circumstances, but even that's not a good look considering that you basically you got rid of a defense that was competent at times and replaced it with high priced free agents. And who knew, Gerald? You go from one Davis to the next, and it's the same old story. Just throw money at the problem. Just throw money at a problem and eventually take care of itself. It never does. Not in the silver and black. Uh, Chris brought up a very painful draft. A very painful draft. Not a speck of talent that the Raiders took in that draft, Gerald, and it started with Robert Gallery. 2004 draft, Gerald. Three Hall of Fame quarterbacks in that draft. And the Raiders had the number 2 pick.
Yep.
very
Eli
frustrating.
Manning. Yeah, Eli Manning went first. If you don't want to take a quarterback either, there's a pretty good wide receiver named Larry Fitzgerald who's available. Because Kerry Collins needs somebody to throw the ball to, Gerald, the great Kerry Collins of the Oakland Raider fame. But it's the same old story. It's almost 20 years later. It's the same old story. Replace Kerry Collins with Jimmy G, and you got the same situation. And the big difference is, Gerald, Kerry Collins took his team to a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But that was before the Raiders.
Unbelievable. Right now, between Chris's team and Sean's team, it really doesn't look good for them right now. But here today with representing a 500 team, had some ups and downs. Good man indeed. It is the guy behind LakersBall.com, SOX1947, of course, Simblades with a Y.com. It is Joe Soro who's answering our audience's questions from Super C and B. Want to go ahead and make sure, thank you so much for watching, especially also as well, Blue Magic and Lifted. He had a question, trade away Sutton and Gabe Davis for McLaurin, PPR, and Joe answered on the air, so I truly appreciate it. Your thoughts, my friend, on how the Steelers are doing at least they're doing something better than what Sean's team is doing. Because I was joking to Sean all this week about how they were lining up Josh Jacobs on one side of the backfield, and they were, obviously doing Khalil Mack on the other, the way that he got 6 sacks at the same point in time. I don't know. He just might have been in the huddle with them. We always joke about that, but it seemed like that's the case. Your thoughts on how Pittsburgh's doing after 4 games?
Well, Pittsburgh is suffering what's been an underlining problem that the football world, who isn't a diehard Steeler fan, hasn't really understood. Mike Tomlin is the most overrated NFL coach in the league, and he's been that for a very long time. This is not a 2-3 year issue. This has been really a 10-year, maybe even a little bit more issue. The Steelers have won 3 playoff games since they lost Super Bowl 45. They beat Miami, which was a blowout in 2016. Kellen Moore was the quarterback. They beat Alex Smith in a very close game in Kansas City where they didn't score a touchdown the following week to go to the AFC Championship game. That was their last, I'd say, productive season in terms of postseason play. The year before then, they beat Cincinnati in a game they should have lost at least 3 times. But because Vontaze Burfict and God, I forgot the DB's name. Jeez, the other jackass that was on that team ended up
Pac-Man.
Pac-Man. There you go. Thank you. Decided that they wanted to decapitate and make stupid plays at the wrong time, and basically gave the Steelers 3 15-yard penalties, and then eventually won on a field goal. So you beat a third-tier quarterback, you beat a second-tier quarterback, you won a game that Cincinnati gave you. That's what he's done for the last 12 seasons. And that's with Big Ben, without Big Ben. And mind you, you had the best running back receiver for about 3 or 4 years. You had the best receiver for about 6 years. And you had a franchise quarterback that you could say was at the very least, a top 5 quarterback at the time. Just too many ill-prepared games. A lot of those years that they made the playoffs, they should have had second-round buys. Some might have been even first-round buys. This is coming to a head now. It's going to come to a head because now you can't get bailed out by Big Ben. And Big Ben, in a lot of ways, also didn't show up in certain games as well. I was hoping that he would be great in that 2016-17 AFC title game against New England. I figured maybe it was his time to kind of come through with all the issues they had with injuries and things like that. But we all saw that there was no chance in beating the Patriots in New England at that point. But it's just been this underlining issue that I feel like me and a very few amount of people that are actually talking about it. Mike Tomlin is an average coach. He has benefited from Bill Cowher's reign until about 2 years ago. And now that he's revamped into finally his Mike Tomlin team, you're seeing the most expensive defense in the NFL, and you're not seeing anything on offense because he's incapable of motivating or scheming or X's and O's or anything. The excuse of, well, it's an offensive coordinator issue. Well, at what point are we going to continue to blame the offensive coordinator? We've had Matt Canada, Fincher, we've had Todd Haley, we've had Bruce Arians, and every single one of those 4 offensive coordinators the last decade and a half have been yelled at to get fired. So what is the problem? Okay, we've had a franchise quarterback. We have at this point, an average quarterback who in a lot of ways reminds me of your quarterback there, but in New York, where his heart is kind of being taken out of him. His confidence is at an all-time low. And really, that's what it is. It's the Giants and the Steelers kind of suffer from the same issue, which is they got popped in the mouth and there's been no adjustment. There's no fire. Daniel Jones sucks. That's the easiest thing to say. Kenny Pickett sucks. But then you're looking at like, well, why didn't they suck last year? What happened? Did they find them out? Did they scheme them out all of a sudden? Yeah, maybe. But I would like to think that the right management should be able to somewhat adjust. And when you're watching players, or I should say quarterbacks, really not feeling comfortable in the pocket because they always have somebody in their face, how are you supposed to have them be confident? If you look at the Steeler Houston game today, Sunday, the quarterback did not spend more than 3 seconds without releasing the ball because they knew. Look, we cannot hold this ball more than 4 seconds, otherwise TJ Watt's going to get you. Okay, you just can't do it. It was quick release, running game, blocking schemes that made sense. It took care of that rush, and they were able to implement it the whole time. And there was no adjustment to it. There was no zone defense that could slow down or make CJ. Jesus, I'm drawing a blank. Quarterback for the
Stroud,
yes, CJ Stroud. My God, I got too much on my mind today. There was no scheme to slow down his quick passing. There was no commitment or any kind of decision to kill and make CJ kill you from the running game. So it was a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff, and Steelers are supposed to win Super Bowls. This isn't the Vikings. This isn't the Arizona Cardinals. The Steelers are supposed to win Super Bowls. And regardless if they make a run here and go 9-8 again in the Tomlin era, which is mediocrity, anybody who says, well, he's never had a losing season, don't make me curse right now with that stuff, okay? You want to be average, go be average, which is hilarious because it's like a microcosm of society. People want to be average most of these days because they don't want to work. But I don't want to be average, okay? I want to compete for championships. I want a Super Bowl. And I'm a Steeler fan. I'm sorry. That's what they're supposed to do. So the Steelers management, the Steelers ownership needs to freaking figure out here in the next year or two on who they want to be. If they want to continue to ride that thing where, well, we've only had 3 coaches in the last 80 years. Well, I'm going to tell you guys right now, I'm being honest. I know I have never missed a Steeler game in this century. I have never missed a Steeler game in this century. That means 22 to plus, which will be 23 years that I have not missed a Steeler game. I know what I'm watching. I know what's going on. It's not good from the leader. And I like Mike Tomlin, the guy. My God, he is great. Absolutely great. Great guy, family man. Everything's great, but he cannot coach. He is the most overrated head coach in the NFL of the last 20 years, by far. Now, Bill Cowher used to get that moniker a little bit, right? Because he kept losing in the AFC title game. Same with Andy Reid. But you know what? I would rather compete to get there than to not make the playoffs and continue to suck and win 3 playoff games in 12 seasons. I mean, at least Cowher had an excuse. Who were his quarterbacks during the AFC Championship games that he lost? It was a rookie Big Ben playing against the best probably Patriots team of the Belichick Brady era, which is an 04. You had Cordell Stewart, you had Neil O'Donnell. Okay, give Bill Cowher Big Ben in 1993, or I should say 1992, 93, however you want to call it, and see how many Super Bowls he ends up going to at that point. Right? I mean, you guys are starting to see a little bit of the chink in the armor in New England, aren't you? It's a lot easier when you have Brady there, isn't it? I'm not saying Bill Belichick isn't a good coach, because the fact that they're even in some of these games, this last game was a blowout. they were due to get blown out. They had been blown out when they should have actually, but they've been close with a D- quarterback. I'll give them D+. Sorry, D+ quarterback. And I don't know. Again, guys, it's losing just breeds frustration. It breeds contentment. It breeds resentment. What can you say? I'm not happy. And by the way, your Raiders in 2004. I still to this day have no idea why they didn't draft Big Ben. That was when Al Davis imagined a quarterback. It was Big Ben. Like, what the hell happened?
What, Joe? He drafted a quarterback from Alabama that was pretty good too. His name was Kenny Stabler. Phillip Rivers was right there. I know what you're saying. Big Ben was all around the Raiders. That name was all around.
So
and then a few days before the draft, I'll never forget, Al Davis's favorite reporter, Gerald, Chris Mortensen, found out that
Recently retired.
Right, that Chris was talking about. He loves Robert Gallery. He loves his kid from Iowa. And that was it.
So to add salt to the wound, I believe the 2004 draft was the best draft of the last 40 years.
It was.
Okay. You had in the first 8 picks, 7 of them made the Pro Bowl. And then it just continued after 8. You had Big Ben, Jonathan Vilma, Tommy Harris, Sean Andrews, Will Smith, Vince Wilfork,
Yes.
Steven Jackson, Jason Badman. I mean, you are talking about usually
he's likely the second worst pick that Davis ever made. Jamarcus is first. Jamarcus.
You don't think Darius Hayward-Bay was the worst?
He would be a very distant third, Joe. But yeah, he's there. But the gallery pick was, like Chris was saying, that was a bullet to the head for that Raiders team.
I'll tell you what, though, great conversation indeed. Once again, it's Inside Sports Fantasy Football. Magic Man Sean Grice, Joe Soro, and Chris Lardieri here for you. Thanks so much again for watching and listening. Before we get into today's top subject, besides, of course, obviously how you plan for the bye weeks, which are now here, Calvo, and welcome, Calvo, to the program. I wanted to go ahead and first question for him. Would you all trade Amon-Ra for DeAndre Swift? His receivers are CeeDee, Jamar, and Pittman. My running backs are Madison and Rashad. Magic Man, I'll start with you first.
No.
Chris?
I wouldn't either, even though you're thin at running back. I wouldn't do it.
Okay. All right. Fair enough indeed. Second question was something that Joe answered already in the chat, but I wanted to run by you just in case. Super has C&B Challengers said trade away Sutton and Gabe Davis for McLaurin, PPR. Chris?
Gabe Davis seems to be coming on. I'm not a huge Sutton fan, but if Sean Payton can get this offense right, I mean, I've had McLaurin, so I'm biased, and he's so up and down, he drives me nuts. So personally, I don't want him.
Sean, because Joe said it would be a good trade.
Yeah, how confident are you, Gerald, in the Washington Commanders' offensive line this week?
Oh, I'm just so overjoyed and so overconfident in them. It's scary.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that either.
Yeah.
You know what? Yes, I would try it. Yes.
Lifted the fix is, I don't want to call it the fix. The maneuvering by the NFL has become apparent. It's really I had a breakdown finally a few weeks ago, and this was against the Raiders, that I'm tired of the NFL. I mean, I'm not playing fantasy football after this season. I'm not going to support. I will never pay for Sunday ticket. I will not go to a game that I have to pay for. The NFL is a joke, and it's continued to hypnotize the whole world into thinking they are what they are. They used to be great, but they're just trash. It's a fixed trash game now. That Jets Chiefs game was just another example of how pathetic a product it is. From the kickoffs going into the stands, 99% of the time, to constantly making the wrong calls at the worst time. See, that's the thing is if you're making a wrong call, it's one thing, but how is it always at the worst time? And it's why is it always benefiting somehow getting the game to be tighter in the end or you're trying to protect Patrick Mahomes or Kelsey or who the hell he's dating, all that garbage. That's trash. It's tabloid trash. I hope you all die.
Well, tell you
So
what,
you're
though.
going to snap your streak of watching Steelers games?
No, I will watch the Steeler games because I love the Roonies.
So you're going to go to like one of these Australian websites, I take it, or something like that?
I have my ways. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I know them.
Although I have been lucky this year, and usually I am. The Steeler games are usually on TV 8 to 9 times out of the 17. So I just gotta use my sources.
Oh, you're talking about one of the five most popular franchises in the sport, along with
the first four out of the 5 games, like this last Sunday, was not on. I had to use my other option on.
So Gerald, getting back to fantasy here, I just the question now is Aaron Jones available on waiver wires?
Aaron Jones only is available on some waiver wires.
I'd pick him up. I'd pick him up right away. If you see him, pick him up. The Raiders have one of the worst rush defenses in the NFL. They couldn't stop my 90-year-old grandmother if she wanted to run 5 yards on an inside zone. Pick up Aaron Jones. Something's got to give, Gerald. The Raiders and the Packers are both two of the worst rush defenses in the NFL, and they're playing each other. On the opposite end, you've got two of the best run teams in the NFL playing against each other in the Cowboys and 49ers. So something's got to give there. Whose defense would you select out of that game, gentlemen?
I would go. I'd probably go San Francisco because they're up against Dak. That's the only reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Shanahan. I think Shanahan will outcoach McCarthy ultimately.
Want to mention a question out there before we get to the topic of today. Matthew has got a question. Matthew Marks, truly appreciate you watching and being able to send in your question right here to us. If you have any need of any questions that you want answered on the fly, go ahead, isfantasyfootball@yahoo.com or Inside Sports FF on Twitter. But Matthew Marks says, I've got 3 options for running back 2 this week. Najee, Herbert, and McLaughlin. Who should he go with? I'm going to start with you, Chris, my friend.
Well, I've got him, and he performed last week, so I say ride him again. I go with Herbert. I know Joe will say not Najee, so I got to take that into account. And I also think McLaughlin is a 1 week flash in the pan.
Not against Baltimore, no. They're going to stack the line.
Exactly.
I was able to pick up Herbert, and I'm now utilizing him in my starting lineup for this week, but I was able to pick him up off the waiver wire. He's still available on some waiver wires to let people know out there, so keep an eye out for him. Sean, anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, I'll go with Herbert, too.
There you go. Herbert, indeed.
Hey, Bear.
Raging Cajun.
Well, I will say, though, that the other Bear, Herbert, is out this week on a bye. So before we get to, again, our main story on this, Chris, when you start seeing the bye weeks, I know a lot of people just draft, and they say, well, to heck with the bye weeks. I'll just deal with it when the time comes. We're now in week 5, my friend. We're now in week 5. The time has come to handle the bye weeks. How best do you handle those bye weeks?
So for us, it's streaming defenses. We had Tampa. They had a nice game against New Orleans. We knew we're going to need a defense this week. Thankfully, the Lions were out there. Our waiver priority worked. So pay most attention, like you mentioned earlier, to your kickers and defenses. My second tactic is wait for waivers to clear. Go out there, whether it's on a Wednesday or maybe even later in the week if there's some injuries looming, and look at those teams that are on bye, because what happens is people get desperate, they get caught red-handed, and they may go release someone that's halfway decent. I'll just use like Sean said with Aaron Jones. Not that he's on a bye, but if someone put him out there just because he was hurt, you see a lot of the similar things with bye week teams. So maybe there's someone on the Chargers, for instance, that could put out there that shouldn't. Highly doubt Justin Herbert would be that player, but you can find some value there. Even too, if there's a really good defense that's on bye and you do have a roster space or one of your guys can go into the IR slot, stash him so you could keep that defense for the rest of the season. That said, I wouldn't pick any giants in this maneuver, but that's my only asterisk.
Joe, what are your thoughts, my friend, when it comes to how you go ahead and strategize for your bye weeks?
Well, when you're doing your draft, you stack your running backs and your receivers for that reason. And typically, it's hard to usually draft good receivers that are having the same bye. It's very rare. The only issue is one of my leagues, it just seems like half my receivers and half my running backs that I picked are injured. So I just prepare for the stack. And then as soon as one is out, put the other one in, and then that solves the problem. I don't really think about it too much. I probably should. I've always
During the draft, you mean?
Yeah, I've always told myself, pay attention to it. But then when the draft starts, you're just sitting there like, shoot, I don't have any choice. I got to get this guy. And that's usually how it plays out. So I prepare in that I stack my skilled positions as much as I can during the draft so that when the buys come, I don't have to worry about, oh, shoot, I'm going to have a problem this week.
What about you, Match? Your thoughts on this, my friend, as far as you being able to go ahead and strategize the way, because over the next few weeks, you'll be seeing nothing but bye weeks for a lot of the teams out there. I know at some point in time, if it doesn't hit you now, it's going to hit you at some point in time in the not too distant future.
Yeah, Chris brought up a great point that should be reemphasized, is that if you can find a great defense that's potentially on a bye and they're just out in the open there, pick them up. I believe the Browns are on a bye this week. That's a really, really very good rush defense, Gerald. They may end up as the best rush defense by the end of the year when it's all said and done. So if you see the Cleveland Browns defense just sitting out there, I'd pick them up.
Guys, great to have you here. It is Inside Sports Fantasy Football. Before we head on out, though, the topic of the day is the record rookie streak for some really, really good player. Just going to go ahead and mention him right now, Puka Nacua of the Los Angeles Rams. He has been playing out of his mind. He's been Matthew Stafford's main target, and he is just absolutely killing it out there, having a rookie record for number of catches, yards after 4 weeks. Chris, I'll start with you first, my friend. When you see someone like that as a rookie, untested, unproven, have this kind of success, and right now, overall, he is in the top 20 players overall in fantasy points. What's your thoughts on that? And the fact, the biggest glaring thing I see in regards to his productivity is the fact that he has only scored one touchdown, my friend.
Yeah, and that was this past Sunday in the walk-off win against the Colts. Guys caught 39 passes in 4 games. I know the overarching concern is that with Cooper Kupp potentially coming back this week, that's going to limit the number of targets that go his way, which may be the case. But I would argue teams are still going to key on Kupp, and they're, even if they're not, and they're going to try and focus on him, Kupp's not going to have that double coverage like he had last year where his numbers took a dip. And then 2, I just think, like, basically Puka's not going to get the high number of targets volume wise, but he's going to continue to get the ball. I mean, when was the last time the Rams had a good number 2 receiver? They thought Allen Robinson was going to be the answer last year. I know they had Robert Woods. I would argue he was, what you look at his career since then, he's more of a number 3, I think, personally. So I think he's got value. Hold on to him. Just don't expect these, ridiculous number of catches, especially if you're in a PPR league.
Joe, Puka's been killing it. I know a lot of people that may have gotten on him too late, and they tried to go ahead and reach out in the waiver wire, and he was already gone because somebody was smart enough to take him sooner rather than later because they didn't believe it would continue. But after 4 weeks so far, it looks like it has continued, my friend.
I think Sean McVay is going to use him like a Wes Welker when Randy Moss was there. So maybe Cooper Kupp gets 6 catches if he's healthy, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe Puka still continues to do what he does, maybe a couple passes less. But I don't think a guy that skilled, a guy that can get that kind of separation.
4th round draft pick, too.
Sean McVay, this is the part where you start asking who is a good coach. This is when you ask, is Sean McVay a good coach? You say yes. Because these are the type of things that happen when you have a good coach. He's found this 4th round gem, and he's turned him into a guy that maybe 120 catches. Because his separation, his catch, and his drop, I call a drop. Antonio Brown used to do the walk-off, which is get out of bounds. He's not getting hit. He's catching, he's getting yards after the catch, and then he's down. It's like, it's reliable. He's there. He's always open. Those things don't go away completely, even if you bring in Cooper Kupp. He might get a couple less receptions, but he is going to be utilized possibly even more because now, are you going to be able to shadow Cooper Kupp? Probably not. So that means single coverage on both receivers. And at that point, you can't even shade anybody to either one. But it's going to depend on Cooper Kupp's health. We've seen Cooper play well, healthy, but then he's also, been out for the year on an injury. So, but Sean McVay is a good enough offensive coach to where he's gonna figure some things out here. We're gonna find out very quickly if it's gonna matter. We'll find out probably in the next few weeks.
Sean, when it comes to Puka's status, are you sold on it? Do you think he's here to stay? It reminds me a little bit of what we saw recently from Amon-Ra St. Brown, who also was he also a 4th round pick, if I'm not mistaken, or in that range?
I think he's in that range. I'm not sure if it was exactly.
I'll look it up. But when it comes
definitely in that range, yeah.
Yeah. So it comes to a mid-round pick who's just producing for you so well, so quickly. It just seems like you're basically trade him while it's high, sell high, or play him a lot right now because I still think it's going to come to like when Cooper Kupp comes back, a little bit less than what you're expecting right now.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Gerald. I think you're right. I think you should sell high here. Been very productive, but I think when Joe kind of hit the nail on the head, I kind of see him being more of that
4th round for Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Pretty good memory there, Gerald. Former alum.
Yep. There you go.
All right. But yeah.
Are you though?
Yes, he is.
Really. I want a cup of coffee. There you go.
Anyway. Yeah, he's more of a probably more of that in that 3rd wide receiver role when Kupp comes back. Maybe McVay designs some stuff for him on the outside like he has already. It's possible, right? That
I would just say start him as your wide receiver 1 or 2 until you see otherwise.
Because I think until the production starts dropping. Yeah, I just milk the cow. Milk the cow.
Yep. I do see him finishing out pretty good, but with Cooper Kupp coming back, Cooper Kupp is going to want a lot of touches, and it's going to mean a lot less for him. But that doesn't mean he's totally out of your offense. He could still be a wide receiver 2 or a flex going forward. But yeah, just wanted to go ahead and answer that question. A lot of people asking if it can end because he is on a record run. But if you have Puka, my suggestion is to go ahead and just ride it while you can, because it will probably not last at least the way you are scoring off it now. He is one of the top 10 players in the league. He will not continue to be that way unless something dramatic happens again to Cooper Kupp. Right, Sean?
Yeah, exactly, Gerald. Exactly. And it wouldn't shock me if somebody won a fantasy picking him up on a waiver wire like before week 1, and they had like Garrett Wilson as their number 1 wide receiver.
Yeah.
We saw how that went with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, have you seen him on a lot of trade proposals, Jared? Garrett
Not
Wilson?
yet.
No? Really?
Not yet. Yeah.
That's interesting to me.
Well, I'll tell you what, though, still some great things that could happen. I haven't seen a lot of trade activity yet in any of my leagues, which is something that we probably should discuss on next week's program, Chris. So definitely, if the guys are here as well, we can discuss why are they seeing activity in their leagues. If not, if they are, we want to go ahead and hear your thoughts on that, how to facilitate those kind of trades. So I think that's something we can go ahead and approach on next week's show. But guys, before we head on out, if you've checked out the lines, week 5 in the NFL, it's that time again. It's time to head down, front yard. You look over, you got the bone over there. You got the basically where for the food and the water for the dog. But woof woof woof, got to head over to the doghouse.
Between you and Soro, you don't have a dog effect?
No, not right now. That maybe something at point in time.
I don't
maybe
want a dog.
Well,
you got the soundboard. You get your soundboard.
Don't
there.
ever talk
I could do something in post. How about that? Woof, woof, woof. It's time for the doghouse. Chris, I'll start with you, my friend. For NFL Week 5, well, these guys go ahead and look at and see which exactly they've got for an underdog this week. I know you've got always something planned out for the doghouse. How did you do last week, or what you got planned and lined up this week?
I did atrocious like my Giants, and I'm off to a crappy start like them too. I picked the Dolphins. They got trounced by the Bills. I looked through the lines again this week, and I'm seeing recurring theme. Las Vegas has an addiction to the number 1.5. If I see another 1.5 line, I think I'm going to lose my mind. They refuse to do pick 'em, and they move past the 1 point, and they kind of skip over that 1.5. Maybe you'll see 2.5, 3, but I don't know what's going on with that number this year. Overall, the lines this week, besides what Joe's told us here about his Steelers, they're getting 3.5 against the Ravens. But as much as I love a plus 3.5 number, I don't have the guts to touch that. So what am I going to do? I'm going to double down like a lot of the idiots, including Brandon Staley in the NFL, who likes going for it on 4th and 1 in his own territory. I'm going to bet against the Bills again. The London game, the Jaguars, their real home. They got to stay in jolly old England for another week, so they'll be well rested, no jet lag, even though they kind of had an performance against the Falcons. Some places I see them getting 5.5, 6. Whatever the line is, I say take it. I bet they hang around. The Bills, after a big win, are due for a little bit of a letdown. While I do think Buffalo will most likely win this game, I think the Jags keep it close, and I'm just going to play a little geography here and say take the London Jaguars with the points.
Joe, who is your pick for the doghouse this week?
I see the Rams upsetting Philly.
I knew was going to go with that one. Good job. I like that one. That's good. Yeah, I just think that Philly's going to go in there a little overconfident because they're obviously have bigger pictures in mind for themselves, and I just think that if they're in line for a slip up against a team that was really bad last year, seems to be a lot better now. Stafford is obviously, we just talked about Puka and all that, so I really think that the Rams can keep it close and make things interesting for as well. So
I think Sam Howell opened up a can of worms that I believe Sean McVay will take advantage of.
Yeah, good point. Absolutely.
Because Philly has a very good defense, and Sam his coming out party was this last week, and I think the Rams can take advantage of that, and they're at home. In a lot of ways, it's not that heavy of an underdog really when you're at home and you're the NFL is as even as it is, but that's the one I believe will. I think that's the one that I feel very comfortable that the Rams can take it.
Sean, who do you have in mind for an underdog this week?
Well, kind of going out on a limb here, Gerald, but there's way too many points in this game for me not to think there's going to be a letdown sandwich for the Detroit Lions. Think they end up beating the Panthers, but that line is too big. I know a lot of people might be enamored by the idea of a backdoor cover there, but I wouldn't play that game. Usually, what happens is the Lions are up for an emotional game. They come down a little bit. They're up one week, they're down the next. They're a really good team. I just think they got to balance out that emotion. I'd take Carolina and the points.
8.5 is what I'm seeing right now. Is that what you got?
I've seen 10.
Wow. If you could get 10, that would be sweet. Yeah, I would take that action all day. Bears at the Commanders for me. I think that the Bears, if they can get the running game going, I would probably put them in line to go ahead and upset the Commanders because as we've seen, you cannot have continual faith in the Commanders, either home or away. So I'm going to just leave that one there. But I like Joe's pick. That was actually the one I was going to pick first. But I will tell you that those are great picks indeed. If you have questions, though, at all for us, please let us know. isfantasyfootball@yahoo.com or Inside Sports FF. Guys, looking forward to a great NFL Week 5. Do not forget, again, if your team, you need to look over before the game start because your players might be on a bye week. You need to make the changes. If you need to stream a kicker, if you need to stream a defense, do it now, please, because you'll be glad you did because your options are a little bit more available than they probably will be a day or so from now or even like Sunday morning. Good luck on there. So, yes, be prepared. The bye weeks are now here, but looking forward to a great NFL Week 5. Chris, what are you and also as well, Dominic, working on with the Domination Sports Nation before we head on out?
Yes, we're back from a hiatus. Our latest show dropped Monday morning. Also, like to echo your sentiments. Thanks to Buddy at Croc Radio up in British Columbia, a new addition to their station. We talked a lot about NFL Week 4, previewing the MLB playoffs, a quick mention or two of the NBA with the Dame Lillard trade, and then just anecdotally, reviewing our trip to Phoenix to see a Giants Cardinals and a Cubs D-backs game, and then getting off sports altogether, I review the Coldplay concert this past weekend at the Rose Bowl. So check it out wherever you get your podcast. Follow us at Domination Sports Nation on Instagram, or you can follow me on Twitter at Chris L Sports. And one final thought: Dom came home from school today. He gets home late from practice, and he says to me, "Dad, I traded Nico Collins for Jalen Waddle." And I said, "You're a smart kid. You not only listen to our podcast here, but you're learning how to sell high and buy low." So I like that trade. I do think Collins is a nice receiver, but whoever fell asleep owning Jalen Waddle, he just snooped in like it was roadkill. So proud of the kid.
There you go. Well, hopefully it'll pay off for you guys. Nico Collins, Jalen Waddle, I have on my teams. So I'm hoping that both will continue to do well, but that could be a very good trade for you guys indeed. But yes, with CJ Stroud, again, that's another rookie that's on a really good streak. So that will probably come to an end sooner rather than later. He'll probably have at least one bad week going here pretty soon. So Joe, Sean, I know you're with me on the Lakers Fast Break all week long. We covered a lot of great things, including we have team previews all done for all 29 other non-Laker teams. So go ahead and check that out today. It's available right now in the YouTube archives and also wherever you get your podcasts. But Joe and Sean, what are you looking forward to from this weekend in the NFL? Sean?
I'm just hoping for some good football because I know Monday night there's only going to be one result, Gerald. The Packers blowing out the Raiders on Monday Night Football. Happened with Brett Favre. It happened with Brett Favre in Oakland. It happened with Aaron Rodgers in Oakland. And unfortunately, it's going to happen with Jordan Love.
It's impressive.
What am I looking forward to in the NFL? Maybe a week where the league doesn't fix games.
Okay. Well, there's no Taylor Swift, I think,
Well,
action on this one.
do you think the Steelers will score more than 17 points this week?
No. Hopefully they win 14-10.
Gonna
Well,
need
she
to.
could
Which
be
is
headed to
the
Minnesota. She could be
standard
headed.
with the Ravens. 3-4
We'll see.
points.
Is that a primetime game? The Chiefs and Vikings?
No.
Or has it
No.
been moved to
No.
primetime?
No, it's
No.
49ers Cowboys on Sunday night.
That's
What are the Vikings going to do with Kirk Cousins? At
They
what
should trade him.
point? At what point you should probably figure out something while he's at a statistical height, right?
Yeah.
But then what do you do after that? You just wash the season?
Yeah, at some point they got to get to that, right? I would trade him if they're like 1-5, 1-6. Or who
Are they
knows?
really that bad to where they can be? Go get Caleb Williams. I don't think they could. They have talent on that team.
No, but what'll happen is there's probably about 5 quarterbacks that are going to go in the first round next year, and as teams watch the college season go on and they start maneuvering, they figure, if I can get here in the top 5 or top 10, I've got a shot at a good quarterback at least. It'll be a lot
it's
cheaper.
not like he's doing terrible, but the problem is the results are not there. Just not there. 11 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 1,200 yards passing. Fantasy-wise, it looks great. It's just not on the scoreboard. That's all.
It's weird. He has a very weird career. 300.
That he does.
300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and they don't even have. They continue to lose. It's weird.
I think I saw a stat the other day that said that Joe Cap had 60 interceptions in his first 300 passes with the Minnesota Vikings, and Kirk Cousins has I think 7 or 8 interceptions and about 500 pass attempts.
Wow.
Yeah, Joe Cap took them to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, Joe Cap lost to Kansas City. That was the year that Frank Tarkenton wasn't quarterback. Joe Cap and Terry Bradshaw would not have had careers if they had played now.
Yeah,
they would have been dead.
Yeah,
Well,
you're
he
right,
has
Joe.
Fumble. He and Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, he's
lead
got
the
a
NFL
fumble
with
problem. Yeah, he
3
does.
fumbles. So.
Franco Harris had a fumbling problem. Go look at his stats. Guy fumbled 12 times a year.
Last question from Brandon Gregory, though. Joe, I'll start with you first. Pacheco or Brees this week?
Oh, I go with Brees if between those two, only because Denver has the worst rushing defense in the NFL. They've given up over 704 yards so far.
There you go.
Damn, that's a good question. I think Pacheco's starting to rise. I'm going to go Pacheco.
I agree. He ran well against the Jets, and they're a stout defense. So I think he's really coming on this year.
Well, there you go. There you have it. Some great thoughts right there from Chris Lardieri, Domination Sports Nation. Joe Soro right there for the Lakers Fast Break and LakersBall.com. Magic Man Sean Grice from Lakers Fast Break as well. If you have any questions for us, again, isfantasyfootball@yahoo.com or Inside Sports FF on Twitter. Looking forward to a awesome Week 5 in the NFL. Hopefully your team will go ahead and really get it done this week. It really is a tough one. Absolutely, Brandon. But you know what? You had a great question, and our guys were able to answer it. Hopefully your team will execute what they need to do in order to go ahead and get some wins this weekend. We'll see what happens. Don't forget the bye weeks. I know I keep stressing it, but don't forget the bye week started this week. Check your lineups. You're going to regret if you didn't, but make sure you do and listen to us each week right here at Inside Sports Fantasy Football.
Da, ch, da, ch, da, da.